I would like to start by thanking so much the University of Cambridge for inviting me and all of the distinguished speakers that I'm privileged to be on this panel with today, colleagues and researchers and students from the Real Center, as well as from the Center for Lebanese Studies, for your work on this important study and launching it, and for your strong belief in the importance of education for Palestine refugees and Palestinians. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues at UNRWA, in particular my education colleagues. We are 20,000 strong, and in 3 years I have not had the opportunity to meet all of them, but I strive to do so every day and to communicate with them when I can. I also want to thank all of our partners in this study and in general in Palestine who support education for Palestine refugees and Palestinians writ large, starting with our key partner in the Palestinian Authority. For over 75 years now, UNRWA has been supporting Palestine refugees in realizing their full human potential. Operating one of the largest refugee education systems in the world and one of the only formal refugee education systems in the world. In 2023, we were running 711 schools, employing over 22,000 education personnel and delivering learning to 540,000 students in Gaza, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. That was when I first joined UNRWA. Through our fully accredited education program, we have contributed to building the careers, as the ambassador clearly stated, of over 2.8 million Palestine refugees who have graduated from our schools, despite many hardships they and their families have faced over the years. Despite our agreeing that education, not just us agreeing, but all member states of the United Nations having agreed over and over again during these 77 years that education is a basic human right and a frontline necessity in times of crises. For over 2 years now, we have been witnessing, as my esteemed colleagues on this panel have said, the destruction of the entire education system in Gaza and continuous attacks on education in the occupied West Bank. In Gaza, 97% of all UNRWA school buildings have been damaged or destroyed, and 92% will require full reconstruction or major rehabilitation. They are also mostly being used as shelters. As such, until we address the shelter situation, we will not be able to address the education situation. Despite being protected under international law, about 1/3 of the UNRWA schools have been directly hit or damaged. Education for around 700,000 school children in Gaza, of which 300,000 were UNRWA students, has been stopped for over 2 years. The number of students with lifelong disabilities has multiplied, with a complete lack of access to emergency education and psychosocial support services. Vital supplies, including educational supplies, have been waiting for months to enter Gaza and still have not done so. Trauma, displacement, loss and hunger continue to affect children's everyday lives, depriving them of their childhood, their hope, and their sense of a future. In the West Bank, the education of more than 806,000 students, including 48,000 UNRWA students, continues to be attacked. In January last year, 10 UNRWA schools in the north of the West Bank were forced to close, affecting the education of over 6,000 students. In May 2025 in East Jerusalem, Israeli authorities forcibly closed 6 UNRWA schools, leaving 800 students without alternatives for completing their school year. The long-term impact of learning has been devastating. As the studies show, in particular this study, children in the Gaza Strip are estimated to have lost the equivalent of 5 years of education since 2020. While in the occupied West Bank, a minimum of 2.5 years of education have been lost due to interruptions and closures. This comes with a devastating human cost, a lost generation of Palestine refugee students. As UNRWA, we have worked to ensure learning continuity as much as we can. In the Gaza Strip, we are reaching over 65,000 children with an in-person learning taking place in 520 classrooms in 73 schools that have been turned to shelters. Nearly 300,000 students are attending the 2025-26 scholastic year through remote learning. Essential psychosocial support is being delivered to more than 520,000 children by UNRWA, even before the current ceasefire was in place. Palestinians continue to prioritize education even during this conflict. 89% of our high school students supported with UNRWA scholarships have been doing their education remotely. In the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, all UNRWA students have completed the last 2 scholastic years through a combination of blended learning. And due to the military operations in the north of the West Bank, almost 2,000 UNRWA students are being accommodated with much thanks by us in 11 Palestinian Authority schools. Our network of teachers and school counselors have prioritized children's learning and well-being, despite experiencing their own trauma and loss and pressures. The current ceasefire has provided a rare window of opportunity for hope to allow UN and UNRWA to address the unspeakable needs of over 2 million people in Gaza, including its over 700,000 students. UNRWA has been able to scale up the delivery of in-person learning and psychosocial support by opening new classrooms in our shelters, implementing remote learning activities, and reaching more students with tailored psychosocial support. Thanks to our almost 8,000 education staff on the ground in Gaza. However, we can only deliver as much as the conditions on the ground allow us to do so. Restrictions on humanitarian assistance, fuel supply disruptions, breakdown of law and order, and bombardments that have not stopped. Suspension of funds from some of our major donors have forced us to take significant cost control measures which have hindered our ability to support the work of our staff, including and especially our teachers. This comes amid cuts affecting the broader humanitarian and development ecosystem globally. While we welcome the increased support of some of our donors and private individuals, projections for 2026 remain bleak. A sudden dismantling of UNRWA would not only undermine the UN efforts to address Gaza's humanitarian crisis and worsen the crisis in the West Bank, but also deprive over 500,000 children of education, perpetuating the cycle of violence, poverty, and exclusion. Education can counter the underlying causes of violence and foster inclusion, tolerance, and conflict resolution, which all support the long-term processes of reconciliation, recovery, and peace building. Supporting UNRWA means ensuring the UN values of global citizenship, nonviolence, and gender equality and human rights remain at the center of children's development as individuals and as part of their community. I am often asked when I travel internationally, how can we help? What more can we do? And certainly the faculty and students of Cambridge have been doing so much for us. But still, I will say, that you can help us further by continuing to advocate for the lifting of the siege and the ban on UNRWA, and all restrictions on regular and at-scale humanitarian assistance. You can also advocate for the protection of schools, teachers, and students through respect for international and humanitarian rights law, and encouraging states parties to endorse and implement the Safe Schools Declaration, of which I am both sorry and yet pleased to say that there are only 3 states, member states of the UN from the Middle East have adopted this declaration, one of which is the state of Palestine. The others are Lebanon and Egypt. No, not Egypt, sorry. Got it wrong. I'm drawing a blank, but I'll come back to you on that. And finally, the third thing that you can do is advocate for adequate and sustained political and financial support for the full reinstatement of the education system in Gaza and the reinforcement of the system in the West Bank, so that every child in the occupied Palestinian territories has access to formal education. As part of the UN family and as the largest UN humanitarian organization in the Gaza Strip, we stand ready to support the full implementation of the ceasefire plan, while continuing to address critical humanitarian needs effectively and at scale. I would again like to thank the University of Cambridge, not just for this important study and for this meaningful event, but for your unending support for the education of Palestinians and Palestine refugees. Thank you so much.